Welcome back to the What You Want More podcast. I'm your host, Quinton Harris. You're dialed in for episode 266. First-time homebuyers, are they back in the market? What rate do we really have to have? And what's making the inventory remain flat at the national level? All that and more in this episode of What You Want More. All right, so welcome back. You know, it's been a minute since we've been in the studio. It feels good to be back in here. Charlie's sitting down, chatting up with you before the show. Just a lot of good stuff to talk about. You know, over the last 2 months, we kind of took a little bit of a break. We're going to get back into our weekly cadence. Reasoning for that is we had a lot going on. I've been doing a lot of presentations around the country. I've been talking to a lot of different people around the whole United States about our REMLO exclusive program, doing a lot of economic forecasting, been recruiting a lot of branches, seeing a lot of activity out there. And that's really kind of consumed a lot of the time here. But in doing that, I've had a lot of people come up to me and go, hey, man, I really enjoy your podcast. Or, hey, man, what's the name of the podcast that you host so I can start following it? I even had a young lady in Indianapolis that we're recruiting who said, I had never heard of BTR until literally I was watching one of your last episodes, Build to Rent. And she goes, and then here I am working with a builder that's talking about BTR. She's like, I felt like I could have a very knowledgeable conversation with this person because I listened to that. I wouldn't have known what that person was talking about prior to that conversation. Things like that, you know, make you realize like you are making some sort of impact on people's lives. So I was excited to get back in the studio today. Had a long weekend. Parents weekend seemed to be the weekend around the country if your kid goes to college. I was reading about all the different celebrities that were trying to figure out and navigate their way to Parents Weekend. And as I went to Knoxville, Tennessee to go visit my daughter, my wife and I went up there. It was an awesome weekend. But I got this sense of being able to talk with a lot of her friends, a lot of her sorority sisters and just friends on campus and other parents that we met. The topic was real estate. I thought this was really interesting that a lot of these parents were looking for homes to buy. They were looking for opportunities for their kids, but it wasn't there. It wasn't available. A little bit of a disconnect because the demand of mom and dad wanting to help the child become a homeowner in that area. Maybe it's to offset tuition to be more of a in-state tuition. Who knows what it is, right? Or just want them to own real estate. But these prompted great questions and great opportunities for conversations that I was able to have with these parents. And there was this growing desire, but also demand. And as I talked to a lot of these young adults, and I say young adults because they aren't over 21 at this time. And there was this major passion to be a homeowner. That's unusual because the national news won't tell you that. They tell you that the average first-time home buyer is 40. You know, I just met a young man last week, closed on his home, 23 years old. I was like, congratulations, dude. You just beat the national average by 17 years. And, of course, he had a very real estate-driven father and mother who wanted him to understand about home ownership. But what I recognized in these conversations was there's a lot of new conversation with young generations happening about ownership, home ownership. And what I was asking these students as they get ready to graduate or continue on their college career, like, what's the thing you want to do? What's the one thing you want to do coming out of college? All of them said, I want to be a homeowner. I want to own real estate. Not that I want to buy this car, not that I'm looking to get this specific ride, real estate. I thought that was extremely encouraging. Man, it like warmed my heart to hear that because there's this gap, right? The millennials, if you look at it, largest generation on the planet right now, if you look at the millennials, they literally put everything on hold and said, home ownership's more for us later on in life, right? We want to do other things in life at that time before we become home ownership. So now you got a generation behind that, Gen Z, that's coming in and saying, hey, listen, home ownership's really important to us. And so it posed the question. I started to ask myself, like, okay, we talk about this shadow demand. We talk about this pent-up demand, all the demand, right? But what if there's more than what we actually can forecast? One of the slides I'm going to pull up here that I talk about is I love this demographics, right? We talk about the demographic slide. They show the way, right? And if you think about like demographic marketing, right? What's interesting about this is that, go back to the movie Ford versus Ferrari. If many of you saw this movie, I'm sure probably at least 50% of the audience did. But Lee Iacocca, there's a scene where Lee Iacocca is actually sitting down with Henry Ford II, right? And they're talking about, hey, listen, we need a car that's sexy, it goes fast, because we have this generation, a lot of them that are young and they want this car. Well, at that time, he was referring to the baby boomers, which was the largest generation. And Lee Iacocca decided to market it around a generation and build an automobile that met the needs of that generation. And where I'm going with this is he used generational marketing to pave the way for his success. And to the day, the Ford Mustang is still the best-selling car for Ford. What that movie doesn't talk about is that years later, Lee Iacocca comes back and says, hey, we need to continue a trend with this generation. We need a bigger vehicle. We need a vehicle that, has, room for four, a family, right? It doesn't need to go real fast, right? It needs to be durable. And Henry Ford, who, at the time was considered a bad drunk. They got into an argument and Lee Iacocca got fired, right? Well, Lee Iacocca went to Daimler Chrysler very, very quickly and created the number one selling minivan for them, right? So he followed a generation and said, we're going to market that generation. Where I'm going with this is that if you look at the slide that we're going to put up on the screen here, this millennial generation is literally, if you look at 40 years old, is only going up in demand from that generation. But look on the backside of that Gen Z. Those aren't shabby numbers either. So if some of those younger generations at the ages of 21 to 25, 23, you combine that with the millennial population, we've got this swell of demand that's happening. We've got this pent up demand. Some call it shadow demand, but it's there for sure. And where I'm going with this is that it's interesting to me what's going to happen when the timing is right. So what is the timing, right? Let's talk about that. So next chart I'm going to put up is 30-year fixed rate mortgages from 1971 forward. Now, I look at this chart and it's like, okay, well, if you do the historical average, 7.69, right? We've all heard that. Good luck convincing a millennial or a Gen Zer that the 70s and 80s happened at 18% interest. Like, dude, no one's going to believe that. It's literally like, no, fake news. They do not believe it, right? So when you try to say, hey, well, at least you're getting a home at 7, it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because at this next slide, we took basically 2009 forward. And the reason we took 2009 forward is because that's when the millennials started seeing financing opportunities. They started seeing numbers. They started seeing credit card percentages, auto percentages, because most millennials, when they came out of college, one of the number one purchases based on surveys were automobiles. So their rates and everything were in tune with that. Well, shoot, if you look at 2009 forward, the average rate on that's 4.56, not 7.69, 3 points less than what it is over the historical average. So that's why for them, this sevens and upper sixes don't really move the needle. However, we did see something happen in the fourth quarter of 24, first quarter of 26. We saw something happen as rates tend to trick down between 6.4 and 6.2. Well, those first-time buyers came to the market, and they came to play. And they were literally taking down homes, and they were buying them because that's what we like to call the compromise zone. I refer to that. I think I'm dabbing that as the compromise zone, right? I always laugh because my friend Logan Montashami, he calls himself the chart daddy. I was called the pod father, so I'm going to run with this over here on the compromise zone. But the compromise zone is a zone in which we think that first-time home buyer is coming in and going, hey, I'm comfortable with this. I've been sitting on the sidelines waiting for all this doom and gloom, these rates to drop or these home prices to come down. Oh, and guess what? It didn't happen, right? Because all this noise out there, this counterfeit social media, this counterfeit AI telling all of these people, we're in a real estate bubble. Prices are going to drop. They didn't. They've only gone up. Opportunity missed, right? I've never met a home buyer that looks at me and goes, man, I'm really glad I didn't buy that home. I'm glad I waited. Why? Because prices go up. They're never glad they waited. They're actually angry about it, right? So missed opportunity at this point. They're saying, listen, it's going to continue to go up. We're having a hard time finding a home. Oh, and by the way, it's 6.4 and 6.2. This makes sense. So the question is, why does it make sense? Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break. I'll be right back to tell you why that's making sense. Today's episode is brought to you by Texana Bank Mortgage. They're coming to the table with a revolutionary product. It's called REMLO, Real Estate Mortgage Loan Officer. And what they are doing is they are taking real estate agents and they're taking loan officers, and for the first time in history, they're putting them together under one umbrella. They're actually taking two industries right now that sit on top of each other, and they're putting them together and backing it by a full-service bank licensed in all 50 states. So imagine this, you're not just an agent anymore, you're a full-service agent. You're the single trusted point of contact for your client in this entire process. You're seeing the loan and the home search front to end. It's going to change the dynamic of real estate and mortgage lending together. Now, if you're a real estate agent, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to go to askaboutremlo.com. That's askaboutremlo.com. Because what you're going to find there are significant details about this program, how to enroll, and how to gather more information. So if you're ready to adapt and thrive, go to askaboutremlo.com. That's askaboutremlo.com. All right. So, hey, quick word from our sponsor there. Gotta love those guys at Texana. That REMLO program, I'm telling you what, it's changing the way business is done. I'm not going to go on about that, but that is something that's completely different that the market hasn't seen. And, you know, like the commercial said, if you want more details, go to remloprogram.com. That thing is off the charts. It's pretty impressive with what's going on. So let's talk a little bit about the compromise zone. Why 6.4? Why 6.2? Well, because as a first-time home buyer, based on the national income for a first-time home buyer, 6.4 created $30,000 in more affordability. So now that $300,000 home, they can go find a $330,000 home. Well, that $30,000 difference might be the difference between the home they really wanted and the home they were settling for. It might be the difference between having that extra bedroom and not having that extra bedroom. It could be the difference of a lot of things, but the reality is the payment was the same. And that's what's important, because there's been a little uptick in the income for that age group, and then the lowering of rates combined made that affordability of an extra $30,000 on a national average of $300,000 purchase. That is moving the needle. I can say that because when I look at the national charts and I take a look at, let's start with just simple things like inventory coming to the market, right? I like to look at the new listings, right? Well, new listings in this graph, you're going to see it. I have a trend on here from 2021 all the way to 2026. Our friends over at the Housing Wire put together a great intelligence program here. We could just pull these graphs right up. But we're at about new listings currently in April 17 of almost 78,000 new listings, 78,000 new listings. Pendings are also up. Now, this is the time of year seasonality happens, right? So we have 78,000 new listings coming on. We have 392,000 pending sales nationwide. So why is our inventory not moving? Why is our inventory essentially flat? I mean, it's not flat to the point to where, oh, okay, this, it's just a straight line. But if you look at where we started, in January, you look at where we are, the trend line is the same. Well, that shouldn't be happening because this should be seasonality trend. We're escalating up. We're in the listing season. We're in the new inventory season. So why is it remaining flat? Because you got quite a few new listings. You got pendings. Well, here's why. Those pendings are about 4 to 5 times greater than the actual number of new listings coming on. So how can that be happening? Well, here's what's happening. And the data tells you this. First-time home buyers, when they come to the market, they are not replacing the home with another home. They're gobbling up the inventory. So when they gobble up that inventory, we're shrinking the actual inventory as a whole because they're not replacing it. See, if I was to sell my home today and buy another home, I'm replacing it with another home on the market. So when first-time home buyers come to the market, they don't do that. So it deteriorates the inventory, thus causing that flat line that we see happen. And the reasoning you can attest to that is when you saw rates in the month of February drop, well, you see a big run up in pendings. You see a dip in the inventory. Now, with what's going on overseas, this has kind of held back some of that momentum, right? Because our rates have kind of gone up and fluctuating based on that. But here's the thing about what's going on overseas. And hopefully we're coming to some sort of end of that, right? You could do a whole nother show on this. But the simple thing is this. You have an escalation that's happening, and then you have a duration that goes with it, right? And the longer that duration goes on, the worse it is for confidence in the market, thus also the 10-year and also the spread that goes with the 10-year. And right now the spread's our friend. I'm going to look at another chart here where it shows the actual spread, because we all know the way you make a mortgage rate, you take the 10-year and you take the spread and you put them together, round up to the nearest eighth. That should be your actual number for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Well, the spread's the lowest it's been. I got a 3-year trend on here. It's the lowest it's been in 3 years by some time, right? Especially at this time of year. It's our friend right now. Once this duration stops over there, the 10-year reacts and comes back down, we're going to be able to see those rates get not only the 6.4, which is where the compromise zone starts, but we're going to see it trickle all the way down to the low 6s, maybe even peak its head at 5.875 or 5.75. So your Q2, Q3, and Q4 could be incredible, if you're in the mortgage game or you're in the real estate game. But these first-time home buyers, they have figured out what's moving the market for them. And it's interesting to me because, as again, going back to my time in Knoxville, it's not just the millennials. It's that second generation right behind them that's forward-thinking as well. So there is a chance that your 23s, your 24s, your 25s, 6, 7s, you get the point, they are also going to be in the market to get a home. They are also going to be jumping in with both feet to make that purchase. And they've got mom and dad back there willing to co-sign and help. It's an interesting thing. I'm going to continue to monitor that and see where it goes, but it seems to be a trend that's developing a lot of headwind, and I'm excited as hell about it. I love seeing new homeowners come to the market, and I love seeing a younger generation go against the status quo of 40 years old, because no one should be a first-time homeowner at 40 years old. That literally should be a repeat buyer, not a first-time homeowner. So guys, if you like what you're hearing, please share this podcast. Give us a 5-star review at Apple or on Spotify. Look us up on YouTube at What's Your One More with number 1. Hit the subscribe button. Promise you we'll be back week to week with this with more information, more data. Till then, guys, have a great one.
I got one more shot, I'm gonna make it. One more chance, I'm gonna take it. I meant it when I said it, now it's time for me to do it. I got one life to live, so I put my all into it, yeah.